Well, hey friends, this is Jennifer, and this is the Jennifer Allwood Show, the podcast for women who want to find freedom in both their life and in their business. I own a multi-7-figure-a-year coaching business. I'm also a certified life coach. So I have the honor of helping thousands of women every single month make money in the online space and help them to get unstuck from whatever is holding them back, all without sacrificing their faith or their family. In this show, you're going to get the very best life and business advice, always with a healthy dose of Jesus. So buckle in, my friend. I'm so excited that you are here. Well, hello, friends. Welcome back to the podcast. If I sound a tiny bit different right now, it's because I am currently in our home in Arizona in my closet. Funny little tidbit for those of you who might be looking to start a podcast in 2023. Sometimes things like, we've got noises coming over here. That's not good. Sometimes, doing things like, podcasting in your closet is really good for the audio. A lot of people start off doing their podcast episodes in their closet because it's a small, confined area with, carpet in it. So usually the audio sounds really, really good. If you're listening to this today and you're like, but the audio doesn't sound good, just know that I'm sorry. And I'm doing it anyway. So I was supposed to be flying today back to Kansas City, and I would have been recording this podcast for you tomorrow. However, there's a little brouhaha with the, aviation systems today, because today is Wednesday, January the 11th. And so my flight had gotten bumped 3 times. So I was just finally like, we're just going to stay another day. I'm just going to stay another day. And my flight is going home tomorrow. So I'm recording the podcast here in our home in Fountain Hills. I'm at Bougie in the desert right now and recording from my closet. So I want to talk to you about what I was doing here in Arizona. Well, part of what I was doing. So first of all, Jason and I were here for my Wellspring Mastermind that I'm in with Pete Vargas. I'm going to do a whole different podcast episode on that. That's not what I'm talking to you about today. But then we turned it into a team retreat. So the girls that work for Team Allwood all came to Arizona. Jason ended up going back to Kansas City, and we are just still here. And we've had an amazing couple of days just planning 2023 as a team. It's been phenomenal. Okay. So here's what I want to talk to you about on the podcast today. So it's important to me that not only do we work hard as a team, but that we play hard as a team. So anytime we take team retreats or do team planning, I do try to do, some fun things with the ladies. We try to go out to dinner. We try to have some celebratory types of things. Last time we were in Florida, we did like a huge bonfire on the beach with, a charcuterie board and all of the things. It was amazing. And so this time I thought it would be really fun if we rented ATVs and did some things. There's a lot of like ATVing in the desert near where we live. So, and for reference, if you're familiar with Arizona, we are outside of Phoenix, and just outside of Scottsdale, and we're about 12 miles away from Scottsdale. And so there's lots of, we're in desert area, folks. This is the desert. And if you're like, ooh, that doesn't sound attractive. Listen, the desert is stinking beautiful. And by the way, I didn't realize that 2 years ago. I had no idea how beautiful the desert is. So lots of people do things like ATVing out in the desert. There's lots of trails and paths and, places you can go up in the mountains. And so I thought, okay, this will be really fun. So we started to kind of price some local places where we could go ATVing, and then realized that one of the girls who works with us, Mackenzie, who's a project manager for Team Allwood, her parents have a house about an hour away from here. And they just happen to have 4 of those big ATVs that are like 2-seater and 4-seater. They're called Razors. And so, her dad was kind enough to offer, hey, I would love to take Team Allwood up into the mountains, and we'll do, a little day in the desert. And we were like, okay, that will be so fun. Cause in my head, I'm thinking, okay, he's like, we're going to go in a different area, and he really knows his way around. And, he's got 4 of these, and that works out perfect because there were 7 of us here. And so just everything was, magical. So we, set up this time with Mackenzie's dad. And that is what the podcast is about today. So I got some real lessons being in the desert yesterday. Can I just tell you? And first of all, I'll be posting a whole lot of stories tonight on Instagram. By the time you hear this podcast, those stories will have been expired. But if you don't follow me on Instagram, you should, because that's where everything goes first, is on my Instagram stories. It was one of the most thrilling / terrifying things I've ever done. Top three most terrifying things that I have ever personally done. And as we were driving the hour home last night, because then we went to a place for dinner called the Santan Flats, which was so cool. Just a really cool, like steak and hamburger place, with a very conservative vibe. So that's totally, right up my alley. Lots of signs about God and the military and freedom and all of those things. So we had such a fun time. And so we were really able to kind of debrief as a team. And by debrief, I mean just talk about what in the heck just happened to us yesterday. It was so much fun. And I had so many like aha moments. And so what I wanted to do today is just kind of break down some of those for you. There were 5, I think. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes. 5 things that I kind of like got in terms of like desert lessons yesterday that I think might help some of you who are listening, especially those of you who are in business. Okay. So you ready? All right. Number 1. If you've never ridden in an ATV, let me just tell you, it wasn't at all what I was expecting. Like when Mackenzie said, we're going to be in ATVs and she's like, my dad take us up. Like I'm thinking like those things that you sit on them and you're like, it's like you rev it up kind of like a motorcycle and 1 or 2 of you ride on it and you kind of bounce around the desert. No. This was like, those 4-wheeled ATVs. Like we had on helmets, you guys, that had oxygen coming into the helmets. Like there was a hose hooked up to the back of my head. It was so legit. It was so professional. I'm not being facetious at all. Like it was high techy stuff. So you get in the ATV, you're strapped in. So it's like, imagine not a seatbelt, but imagine more of like a harness across your chest and then another one down lower on your waist. And then we have on this full helmet, which also protects your neck. And the helmet has a windshield across the top of it. You can flip up and down over your eyes. It's all for the dust because there's so much dust in the desert. And then because there's so much dust too, Mackenzie's dad put like there's these things that like oxygen literally goes into your helmet to help you breathe. And then there's like doors on the ATV and there's a roll bar at the top and it's kind of next level. I'm not going to lie. And I got to tell you, I was so scared because we started out and instantly her dad's like gunning it. And I find us going 45 miles an hour across the desert. And I'm like, what have I even done? Who am I? We're going fast, but we're on flat ground, right? And so there was that. Then we start going up into the mountains. Now listen, those of you that have ATV'd before, this is probably going to sound lame-o to you, but in my head, the whole time when you guys, I'm getting all like, triggered just talking about it. There were times I was on 2 wheels, like opposite wheels would be the only thing touching the ground and the other 2 wheels would be completely dangling in the air because there were spots that were really rocky. Now listen, Mackenzie's and her dad have both been on these trails many, many times with no issues, no problems. There was a lot of other people out there. So the truth of the matter was we really were not in as dangerous of a situation as what I believed us to be. They've done this many times. The problem is I didn't understand like the apparatus that I was in. And I really didn't understand how the 4 wheels work and how like the shocks are designed and how they are literally designed, those ATVs, those razors, so that they don't have to have all 4 wheels on the ground. So I'm thinking the whole time that we're like near death because I don't understand the vehicle that I'm sitting in and I didn't trust it or the process. And it's really interesting because we took 3 stops yesterday. By the way, we went almost 50 miles, Mackenzie's dad said, 40. We went almost 40 miles. And we were out there for 3 hours in the desert. And at times I went over 50 miles an hour. I'm still like shocked that I'm even saying that. And because I didn't understand, like that's what it's designed for. And all of those things, I kind of lost some of my joy in the process. Does that make sense? Because I didn't trust the equipment. I didn't trust what I was in. I didn't trust the leader enough to like just really enjoy the process. And that spoke to me last night on a deeper level. And it made me just want to share that with you because how many of you are trying to do something in your business and you're in one of my groups, you're in my Better Way program, you're in my mastermind, and yet you don't trust the process. You've seen the way that I've done things. You've seen the way I've launched courses and a membership site and all the things that I'm instructing you to do the same, but you're really struggling to trust the process. And I'm wondering for some of you how much joy that is stealing from you. That was one lesson I learned yesterday. Okay. Second lesson. There was 4 of us in these ATVs, right? So it's Mackenzie and Nell, who is my director of operations. And Nell is a thrill seeker. She's our Enneagram 7. Everything has got to be fun. So Nell She wanted to go fast. She wanted to go far. She wanted to do all the things. So I was right behind them. And then, two of the other girls that work with us. And then Mackenzie, was bringing up the rear. And, one of the things that I just kept thinking the whole time is I just need to follow exactly in the footsteps of her dad. And by footsteps, I mean like, tire marks. It would get to where, he'd get a little bit out in front of me and dust would be kind of being kicked up. And then I would have a hard time seeing through the dust. And so I'd almost have to slow down until I could see him again. It's like the dust in between us would settle. And then as long as I just followed him, or if we were in an area that was not dusty, but was really rocky, if I saw him like pulling clear off to the left side, of the path in order to maybe avoid a, ravine or something else that was treacherous or sketchy as heck in the desert. Like I just kept telling myself, just follow him exactly. Just do exactly. If he goes to the right, I go to the right. If he goes to the left, I go to the left. Now listen, by the end, after we were 40 miles and 3 hours in, then I didn't feel like I had to follow him exactly. If he went around a bush to the right, but I saw there was a path to the left, and it was kind of fun to go to the left, and he went to the right. But initially, for the first 2/3, I promise you, Mackenzie's dad even veered to the right a little bit. I was veering to the right. He straddled a big boulder. I straddled the big boulder. And all I could think of was, if I just do what he's doing and he's not, flipping the thing and dying in front of me, then I should be good. Right. And I was thinking about that later, and I was telling my team this, I just kept thinking, just follow him. Like wherever he goes, I go. And that way too, I was thinking, he has rearview mirrors. These things are so cool. There's actually 3 rearview mirrors, like one on the side or one in the middle and one on each side. And so there was great comfort in knowing I'm just doing exactly what he's doing, because he's done this a million times. And this was my first. So he knows what he's doing. Just follow him. The reason that this ministered to me, and I'm sharing it with you, is because for some of you, you're trying to do something in 2023 you've never done before. You're trying to write and launch a book. You're trying to start a podcast. You're wanting to launch a membership site. Here's what I want to tell you. Find somebody that has already done it and just do what they do. Just do what they do. It's so much easier than trying to figure things out on your own. Get a mentor, get a coach, get somebody that can give you the 1, 2, 3, 4 steps that they did, and do it the way they did it. And by the way, that's not like cheating, copying, or anything else. I literally teach the women that are in my coaching groups how to do things exactly like I did it, because guess what? It worked, right? And it's still working. And so don't reinvent the wheel. When you're doing something the first time, follow someone who's already gone before you, who's already paved a path, who's already gone in that direction, who's already knows what they're doing. And then you can figure out, when you get into your comfort zone, you see what's working, you see what's not, then you can wing it. Then you can go rogue, which is exactly what I did out in the desert. But initially I was following Mackenzie's dad. He was not getting out of my sight. There was no chance I was going to let him. And even some of the girls that work for me, they were like, we were really surprised at how well you kept up. And all I was thinking was, I just had to watch exactly what he was doing. I wasn't going down. I was going to do exactly what he was doing. So that was my point number 2. Okay. Point number 3 is this. One of the times that we stopped, Mackenzie, who is just so precious and dear here on Team Allwood, Mackenzie said, sometimes it's a lot easier to not go so slow. And she was talking to me because she said, because then you feel every bump. And I was like, okay. And trying to kind of process through that. And as I said, Mackenzie's dad and Nell, they were flying, they were going fast, but they would just pause and wait for me. And then we would catch up, or I'd be right on their tail or what have you. But anyway, Mackenzie said, well, when you go so slow though, because I'm going slow thinking that there's safety in slowness. I'm thinking when I go down over this boulder, if I just go super slow and I'm riding the brake, that increases my chances of not dying. And Mackenzie's point was, they're designed, these ATVs, these razors, to navigate the uneven terrain. You're thinking it has to go really slow, but in going really slow, you're not utilizing the vehicle to its full capacity. You're thinking you're actually safer going slow. And of course you got to use wisdom, and going 90 miles an hour over, some of that terrain would have been ridiculous. But she was like, you don't have to go that slow. And it made me think of how, when we were teaching our kids to ride their bikes, how many of you can remember teaching your kiddos to ride a bike? And remember how when they go so slow, they're more unbalanced. Do you remember that? And how momentum can be their friend. And not momentum, again, to, Evel Knievel capacity. But I'm just saying sometimes like the momentum that it gets you going, and you're actually a little safer and there's more stability when you have a tiny bit of speed to you. I hope that ministers to some of you today, because I know some of you, you're very detailed and you want to be in control of every single thing in your business and in your life and all the things. And you're trying to rein things in and go as slow as possible because there's perceived safety in slow. And for some of you, and I don't know who this is, but send me a DM on Instagram, by the way, if this is for you. For some of you, if you would just let momentum do its thing, if you would just kind of get out of your own way, if you would just pick up the speed a little bit, you'd actually be safer probably. It would actually probably be so much easier to balance. Sometimes going slow is actually detrimental. Sometimes you just got to push on the gas and see what happens. All right. Point number 4. Fourth thing that I want to chat with you about. So afterwards, I'm talking to Mackenzie. And by the way, Mackenzie blew a tire. And we'll talk about that here in just a second. We got back, at sunset. It was beautiful. We almost hit several cows. And by the way, I say we almost hit, no, cows showed up on the path. We did not almost hit them, but it's so much funner to say we almost hit them. Okay. But there were cows. There was cow crossings where cows are just, walking across the thing. It's so funny because I told Mackenzie, I guess in my head, I thought we were on those, like there was no roll bar and they were a smaller ATV, the ones that you hear people like flip over the top of. And I guess I thought we were more like not going up a mountain, but in just the flat desert area. And Mackenzie said, I thought about telling you, but she's like, but then I was like, well, would that make her more scared? Because by the way, I remember I read a book called Fear is Not the Boss of You. My first go-to emotion is not comfortableness and confidence in everything. Probably my first go-to emotion is fear. And so I'm constantly having to like rein that in. And so Mackenzie said, I was concerned that if I gave you too many details or showed you exactly where it was going or how up high it would be, that maybe you wouldn't want to do it. And she's like, maybe I should have told you. And I'm like, you know what? I'm glad you didn't. Because had she like showed me the top of the mountain that we were going to, how high we were going to be in the air and how there was a drop off on both sides, had she showed me that we were going to be going over these huge boulders where I would be on 2 wheels, I possibly would have talked myself out of it. And so my takeaway yesterday was, gosh, sometimes ignorance is just bliss. Sometimes it's just so much better that we don't know what the heck we're doing. If you're writing a book this year, and I feel like this is a word from the Lord for someone, you don't have to know all the things. Just sit down and write. Like, it's probably better. You don't even understand how the book process necessarily works. What would happen if you just like tried to quit researching all the things and just started writing the actual book? Sometimes I think ignorance is bliss. I think it's better that we launch the course without even knowing all of the things, without even doing 10 different courses on courses, without even meeting with 3 different coaches to figure out their take on it, without Googling 200 different YouTube videos on different styles of launching. Like, sometimes I think just ignorance is bliss. And we learn as we go. And we figure it out as we go. And that way we don't talk ourselves out of things on the way. I'm actually really happy that Mackenzie did not give me all of the details. And then the last point that I had for you, point number 5, was assume that things are going to go wrong, and not like in a speaking things, death over your situation or anything like that. I'm not talking about that, but I am saying that every time, for instance, we have a launch in business, something inevitably, it goes sideways. It just does. And I'm not speaking something negative of the situation. We've just gotten to where we're like, you know what, things will probably go wrong. You know what also will probably happen? We will roll with it and be absolutely fine. You know how I know that? Because we've had a million things go wrong at a million different times when we're launching, putting something out there, trying something new in business. And we figured out how to just try to stay calm and just roll with things. When we were out there yesterday, Mackenzie did have a flat tire. Things went wrong. Things went sideways. She had a flat. And the way we figured out she had a flat is we all, stopped to kind of meet, and there's no Mackenzie. And there's no Mackenzie. And we're waiting and there's no Mackenzie. And so her dad circled back and found her. And so I think sometimes those of you that are perfectionists and you're wanting it to be really perfect, and maybe even telling yourself the lie that you want it to be perfect for your clients. No, you want it to be perfect for your ego, but I love you because your clients aren't demanding perfection. Can I just say that? They're not. They just want progress. They just want what they want. They want progress, or they want their product, but they're not demanding perfection. So I think that you need to just assume sometimes that it's good enough. Will you get good enough with just being good enough? Will you just get okay with just assuming that things might possibly go sideways? First time you put something out into the world, the first time you send out your email newsletter, it might have some hiccups. First time your website goes live, you might have some issues. First time you try to write your first blog post, it may go sideways. First time you go live on social media, you may press the wrong button. Like, nobody is expecting perfection out of you, but some of you are expecting perfection out of yourself. And I think that if we would just get to the place where we'd be like, you know what, I'm going to have to be okay with just knowing that I'm going to do my very best. And it's quite possible I'm going to miss something. It's quite possible I'm going to get something wrong. It's quite possible things might go a little sideways. And so we've gotten to where Jason and I joke about this all the time at our house, because I have just started telling my family 80%. That's all I can get right, kids. 80%. Sorry that I got the week wrong for your dentist appointment again. 80%. Sorry that I forgot to sign a paper for school. 80%. Sorry, baby, that I accidentally ordered the same 2 sets of pots and pans for Bougie in the Desert. True story. 80%. Like, that's all I can do. I am so the very opposite of expecting perfection out of myself. I am so good with that B minus 80%. Like, if I get 80% right, I'm just going to consider it a win. For those of you who are thinking it has to be perfect before you put it out into the world, you are missing the joy of getting it out there. The people who are waiting for what you have are missing the joy of receiving it. You're putting so much undue pressure on yourself that you don't need to, and you're never going to get a perfect friend. If you would just go ahead and just expect that you're going to do good enough, but you're going to learn, it's going to be a learning experience. Some things will probably go wrong. It will give you so much freedom instead of thinking everything has to be perfect. So those are my 5 lessons from the desert. Trust the process, follow the guy that's out in front of you. Don't try to continue to go slow. Use momentum as your friend. Ignorance is bliss, and things probably will go wrong. Oh, I hope that this was helpful for somebody today. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. It's been fun for me to record from my closet. But listen, if you ever get a chance to come to this part of Arizona, it was an absolute just blast. I'm so glad in retrospect I didn't know what we were doing, so I couldn't talk myself out of it. We were in a place called like Box Mountain. And 10 out of 10 recommend. 10 out of 10 recommend. If Mackenzie's dad happens to be listening to this, or Mackenzie herself, thank you again. We were just so honored and so grateful for just your time and your talent and your treasure. You shared all of that with us this week, and we just can't thank you enough from Team Allwood. So, all right, podcast listeners, let me know by sharing this episode on your Instagram stories and tagging me that you listened to this. Let me know if something ministered to your soul. And I hope you guys have a good one, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye. Friend, thank you so much for listening to the podcast again this week. I'm so honored that you come back for every episode and that you share the Jennifer Allwood Show with your friends and family. Every time I see you guys post about it on Instagram or Facebook or something, it just makes me do a little happy. So thank you. Make sure that you subscribe to the podcast if you never want to miss an episode. So you can go to Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or Spotify or any of the other podcasting places and subscribe each week so that every week you get the new episode when it releases. So just know that I love bringing you relevant content. I love bringing you great guests. And one of the ways you can help us here at Team Allwood is by leaving the podcast a review. So if you have just a second to do that, would you go over and leave a review for the Jennifer Allwood Show? Thank you again. You're amazing. I'm honored to be here. Until next week. Bye-bye.